Welcome to Between Soul and Sky. This is a soul-centered invitation to a spirit-led, soul-inspired podcast dedicated to guiding you on the evolutionary journey of the soul. Here's your host, Ricky from the Star Whisperer.
Welcome back to Between Soul and Sky for our second episode. Today's episode is all about what evolutionary astrology actually is and why is it so important in today's culture and within the astrological community. So if you're new here, again, my name is Ricky from the Star Whisperer and I'm the host here of Between Soul and Sky. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Between Soul and Sky, you can go ahead and head to my website, which is thestarwhisperer.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this. And it is the Star Whisperer Official is my handle. And I'm really excited to talk about today's subject because I feel like within astrology, there are different stereotypes and there's different niches within astrology as well. And I think today, due to social media and the how social media has evolved, and due to 2020 and the things that have happened and the technology shifts that have occurred, we've noticed different approaches. We've noticed new people. We've noticed new ways of viewing astrology. And evolutionary astrology is one of those styles that just is different in so many different perspectives, approaches, ideologies, belief systems. And so what I want to talk about is a little bit of the evolutionary astrology approach, what we look at, what is important, and kind of the understanding behind all of this. So what I first want to talk about is, for me personally, when I first started to learn about astrology, my natural orientation was always to ask questions. Why? Why is this? Why is that? Why is my sun sign this? Why is my moon sign this? Who said this? How does this work? Why would I choose this? Why would I pick that? All of these questions that I feel like as I started to peel those onion layers within my own astrology chart, it led me down this pathway of learning that I wasn't able to get a lot of the deeper answers that I was seeking. Now, sometimes evolutionary astrology can be linked more towards a spiritual or psychological branch. And there are these branches of astrology. You can look up astropsychology, for an example, and that's a completely different branch. Whereas evolutionary psychology is really passionate about being able to explore and understand the evolutionary journey of the soul. Now, there is a way in which people use astrology in which they are understanding one's personality. They want to do predictive techniques. They want to look at, how is this relationship looking for me right now? Is it going to work out? And there's nothing wrong with this. I want to make that very, very clear. All of these different styles of astrology are beneficial. One is not better than the other. In evolutionary astrology, I am really in the space to understand why the soul is here. Why are you experiencing the energies that you're experiencing? Where is the soul coming from? What is the intent of life? What is the meaning of life itself? What's the purpose of one's individual life? And in different ways, the astrology chart can give us glimpses and clues and insight into these questions. And so for those individuals that are passionate about understanding the deeper soul context of their life experience, evolutionary astrology is a great form and style of astrology to look at the chart. And so what I want to say is that when I first came to looking at my chart from an evolutionary perspective, totally changed my perspective of everything. And one of the first things that you learn when you're trying to understand evolutionary astrology is don't look just at your chart, look at family members, look at friends, people that you know concrete, accurate birth times and locations and birthdays. Look at their birth chart from an evolutionary perspective and how does it align with the larger context of their life experience? Because within evolutionary astrology, it's not just about the individual life experience you're going through, it's about the collective experience the soul has been going through. in some way, shape, and form, there is this desire to stop that wheel or that cycle of samsara where we are wanting to understand where is suffering coming from and understanding that one of the root causes of suffering is desire. We can see where desire comes from in evolutionary astrology. What is the soul's desire? What are those conscious desires and what are those unconscious desires? So one of the things that I want to just get into just a little bit is like a teaser. I'm going to go way more in depth with these in the future, but I just want to get our toes wet here. And one of the most important placements in evolutionary astrology is tied to the lunar nodes. Now, the lunar nodes are specific points that are actually not physical astronomical points in the sky that we can see. They're not physical points that you can see. And that's a common misperception that I find a lot of people think, that they can look up at the sky and be like, oh, that's the north node. Oh, that's the south node. No, it ain't. You can't see that. That's not how it works. The lunar nodes are really important because the south node and the north node, and I'm going to start with the south node first, is indicating where the soul is coming from, how the soul has come to understand itself, that past life ego structure in its most recent past life. The south node is of the moon. I want to emphasize that it is of the moon. So in some way, shape, and form, we need to appreciate that the current moon placement in your chart is directly related to your south node and your north node. The south node is going to show us how the soul has come to understand itself. The moon would be how the soul is understanding itself in this life. Now, the north node, what it's going to show us is what needs to be integrated into the current life in order to achieve the evolutionary intentions set out for itself, the soul, in this lifetime. Now, here's something I want to share with you. In evolutionary astrology, when we're understanding when we're understanding what the ego is in the ego structure, one of the things that I want to stress is that the soul creates the ego structure for the current life. And the ego structure for the current life is accumulation of past life experiences. And the soul has come to understood itself to this point, saying, this is what I believe I need in order to achieve, integrate, and evolve one's consciousness. If I can personify the soul, that's what it would say. And so what happens is that when we look at the ego structure, the south node is going to show us the different talents and gifts that one has mastered, but it's also going to show us where that unresolved conflict and the problems are coming from at a larger perspective. Whereas the north node is going to show us what needs to be integrated into this lifetime in order to achieve those evolutionary intentions. Okay? Now, I'm not going to talk about planetary aspects, but what I will say when I get into the episode where I talk about the lunar nodes, when there are planets that are aspecting the lunar nodes or are conjunct the lunar nodes, it is very, very important. Also, understanding the planetary rulers of your north and south node are going to help piece together this picture of why. It's going to help us understand why and the direction moving forward. The other placement that I just want to get into a little bit is Pluto. Pluto is one of the most infamous placements that we look at in evolutionary astrology, and there's a wide range of perspectives when it comes to Pluto, so I really want to emphasize that. Okay? So one of the most important books that has been written on this subject is Pluto Volume 1, which is the evolutionary journey of the soul, written by Jeffrey Wolf Green. Now, Stephen Forrest has written a book about Pluto, and there is a fleet of other books on the subject. Another book that I personally love is by Mark Jones, which I believe is called Healing the Soul. Again, I will list these in the description for you all to look at if you're interested in reading these books. These will give you 3 different in-depth, contemplative, and spiritual and evolutionary perspectives of astrology and your chart. Now, Pluto is going to represent in evolutionary astrology, and from a Jeffrey Wolf Green perspective, the unconscious desires of the soul. It is going to be where the soul could have been through many lifetimes, putting a lot of momentum into one's life. And I'll give you an example. Let's look at someone that has Pluto in the 7th house. That's going to be a soul that has been spending a lot of lives in relationships with other people. And with Pluto, we know that it wasn't rainbows, buttercups, and butterflies. It was probably shitty. It was probably rough. But there's a lesson in what is the soul's intention in that chart is to learn about autonomy, independence, and personal freedom. That does not mean that you can't have a relationship. But what that means is that there is a core desire within the soul that after I exhaust all of these desires of shitty relationships and potentially narcissistic partners or controlling partners, the last desire that's going to be left, or the second to last desire to be technical, is going to be my sense of independence, my freedom. I want to be free. Don't control me. Don't tell me what to do. And we can see this in evolutionary astrology. And oftentimes, this isn't criticizing other branches, because I do believe that there is a beautiful gift in every branch of astrology. But I've noticed that a lot of people will villainize Pluto in the 7th house, for an example, to say you're cursed, you're never going to have a healthy relationship in your life. And that's simply not true. Okay? We need to appreciate that this is not necessarily about some sort of fatalistic approach that this is what you're destined for. We have to keep in mind that the soul has choice and will. And there is a reason why we keep reincarnating, because if it was fated, the approach would be different. I did an interview back in 2024 with Stephen Forrest on a mobile app called Astrostar. And I do have some clips on my YouTube channel of that interview. In fact, one of the clips I've saved is the video where I ask him about fate and free will. I definitely encourage you guys to check that out if you're interested, because Stephen has an amazing perspective about fate and free will. And that's an age-old question that we've been asking ourselves for many years. So why is evolutionary astrology important? Well, here's the deal. I think there comes a moment where we as souls start to question truly the deeper meaning of our life experience. And traditionally that comes from massive moments of change. Some people are born with it. But as we get older, we start to realize through loss, through death, through grief, through losing a job, a relationship that's ended, whatever it may be, we start asking our questions, why? Why did this happen? Why is this unfolding for me? And I feel like evolutionary astrology is almost like a tool towards helping us understand and pointing us at ourselves with the ultimate intention of becoming self and soul realized, recognizing your true potential, your growth, healing the core wounds that we carry, as they're so deeply embedded in our unconscious, so we can recognize our own truth. And evolutionary astrology has that potential. And I feel like to some extent with evolutionary astrology, it becomes not only an astrological practice, but it also can become a beacon, a gateway to lead you towards deeper spiritual practices, towards deeper meditation, towards yogic practices, towards really opening up our mind, towards other beliefs, so we can discover more deeply what our own truth is in this world. So what I want to just say is that your chart is not a cage, it's not a prison, it's not this sort of situation where this is what you're going to be stuck with for the rest of your life, because that's simply not true. Evolutionary astrology is simply just that. It evolves. It shows us that there's an opportunity for the soul to evolve, for one to engage and integrate with the soul, to feel what it feels like to sit in the seat of the soul. And so going back to just the placements I discussed with the North and the South Node and Pluto, I believe that it's not just these 3 placements that are the summary. The whole chart is the summary. There's so many intricacies and there's so many complexities within a chart. From an evolutionary astrology perspective, we have to appreciate that every single one is a creation of the soul and of the creator itself. as a tool towards understanding oneself, towards becoming and accelerating one's evolutionary journey. I once was doing a meditation with a Swami from India, and I had asked him a question, and I said, I have a question for you. Why do you believe the soul takes on a physical body? If soul is merged and united with Source, with God, why would the soul choose to take on a body? And his response was, well, there comes a moment where the soul recognizes that its consciousness must be evolved, that there are still desires within the soul that must be exhausted. Now, this is a whole separate podcast topic when I'm going to talk about desires and talking about the stages of consciousness. In Evolutionary Astrology, as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green, he gets into this ideology of there being 4 levels of consciousness, with sub-stages recognizing where, or not recognizing, but putting out an idea that there are 4 stages of consciousness and sub-stages of consciousness, which all of us are navigating. And every soul will navigate and go through countless reincarnation experiences until all desires have been exhausted, until there's one final desire remaining, which is to find union and reunite with the source that created this experience. And so I feel as if in evolutionary astrology, the potential is boundless. It requires an open heart and an open mind. It can review and look at topics such as money, finances, relationships, or whatever it may be. But my question would be, unless we can answer why we're doing what we're doing, what's the purpose? Why are we doing what we are doing? And I encourage you to ask yourself this today. What are you doing in your life right now? How are you operating on a day-to-day level, and why are you doing it? What is the purpose? And when you can answer that question, what is my purpose and why am I doing what I'm doing? It gives you intention, it gives you power. It gives you almost like you're allowing the soul to take over. So I think there's so much potential in all of this. What is your experience with evolutionary astrology as well? I'd love to hear. Please comment, let me know, engage with me over on social media. Let me know what your experience is with evolutionary astrology. And again, if this is so new for you and you don't know what this looks like, I'm more than happy. You can get a reading with me, which all of that is available on my website at thestarwhisperer.com. And I can show you a little bit more about how evolutionary astrology works. At the same token, if you want to learn this with me, I do have a Patreon, which all of that is also available in my bio on my social medias on my website. And that is just patreon.com/thestarwhisperer. I put transit information up there, tarot advice up there. I share a lot of wisdom on there as well. And I do live events over there too. So you're more than welcome to join me over there if you enjoy studying and learning evolutionary astrology. So again, I just want to express this. Let's find out what our purpose is. And your purpose doesn't need to be tied to your career, and your purpose doesn't need to be tied to your relationship. Everyone's individual life purpose is going to be different because we are all individuated souls with one collective theme here, which is tied to the evolution of our consciousness. And when you can work on raising your own consciousness and evolving your own consciousness, I'm going to say that again. If you can take the time and dedicate yourself towards evolving your own consciousness and raising your vibration, you are making a difference on this planet. And that's what this is about. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. This is the second episode. And I appreciate you for being here at Between Soul and Sky. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out. You can comment wherever you're finding this video today. And again, check me out on social media at the Star Whisperer Official on Instagram. And let me know if where you're getting this from, wherever you're listening today. I appreciate you for being here. Many blessings to all of you. Until the next one, have a good day.